So what is, I was going to ask that, how, you said Deer Management Assistant Program is DMAP, but
DMAP.
what constitutes or creates a DMAP area?
Sure. So from the 10,000 foot view, we manage deer based on WMUs, wildlife management units, right? 2G, 2F, wherever you may be. But we recognize inside of it, we talk about hot spots and cold spots. There could be some hot spots where that landowner says, you might have allocated 40,000 tags for your unit. However, that's not getting the job done on my property, and I'd like to see more antlerless deer being harvested. So they have the ability to apply through our website. There's the application form. They have the ability to apply to enter our Deer Management Assistance Program, DMAP as we call it. And what that does is that lets that landowner get additional coupons that then they can give to hunters, who then can redeem them to kill additional antlerless deer. So it's designed to be targeted to those hotspots for those landowners who have problem. Maybe they're not getting the regeneration that they want. That's probably the number one reason for DMAP that it's being utilized, and it's another tool to get hunters out onto those properties and address the deer populations on those areas.
Yeah, and that's not only private land.
It's
though,
not
right?
only private
Yeah.
land. Right. Originally it was, if I recall correctly. However, it's been expanded. So DCNR. The A&F, you have some of those areas that are public land, but still enrolled in the DMAP program. And even at the Game Commission, we started enrolling some of our game lands in the DMAP program.
Okay.
So public landowners can avail themselves to that program as well.
Yeah, that was something that I don't know when that had necessarily changed, but I didn't realize that until, I don't know, it was a few years ago. I feel like I recognized that there was public land areas that did enroll in that. And for the most part, I mean, especially some of the large private tracts that I've hunted that are open to public hunting, that are DMAP areas, there's a good reason for having it, that you'll see higher populations, and noticing those clear cuts taking longer to regenerate, and just the forest to regenerate. And also, again, with having a good friend who's a forester and being able to explain it to me better, of like, I just ask him questions all the time.
Yeah.
Me selfishly from a deer hunting perspective, but like, why is, the beech taking over versus some of these other ones that you're trying to grow in there? It's like, well, deer don't like browsing on beech, but they love the tulip, poplar, maple, and some of the other ones that we're trying to regenerate. So it makes it difficult.
Yeah, totally. And I'm right there with you as a deer hunter myself. Like, I've got to spend a good bit of time with our forester in the north for the north central region this spring. In fact, I was thinking I spent more time with him than I did turkey hunting this year. So my priorities might be way off, but I got to spend a day and a half with him looking at that regeneration, because that's what it comes down to. Mm-hmm. And he took me to one section. It's just this classic, like, we did a clear cut there, I want to say 5 years ago. And on this side of the road, we just clear cut it and left it. On this side of the road, we fenced it. And the difference is night and day. Like, you would not believe that they were done at the same time. On the side of the road that wasn't fenced, just nothing's growing. Everything's been mowed down. Then you look at the fence, and it's this lush, regenerating forest. It's got all those species that are so hard. You got oak trees coming up, and it's like, that's what's the one thing that's different? Everything else is constant. It's the deer numbers. And even in that fenced-in area, when we were walking through it, we saw deer tracks. So deer have they're in there. We're not managing for zero deer. There's still deer impacting, but nothing like the outside of the fence where they were just mowed down. And then we spent some time looking at a cut from, I want to say 2010, maybe around that time frame. And back then, the deer numbers were lower, and that cut was able to regenerate on its own without a fence. So you see firsthand the impact that deer are having on the ground. And like, as a hunter myself, grew up, the woods all look the same to me. But when you spend some time with a forester, and by the way, there's no better hunters than a forester, I would say. And this guy would certainly live up to that, where you can see where deer are, and there's a reason why they're there, and the impact that they're having. And it was eye-opening. So I'm glad that you're getting a chance to do some of that as well. Yeah,
I'm actually going to be doing some more projects and educational content around the forest management side of things with my buddy, and having him go through these different things, and even helping people understand what the paint means and on the trees, so they can understand when things are going to be cut, and looking at it. But I always joke with him when an area, especially when I know that he manages, and I'll send it to him if it's not regenerating good. I'll be like, what? I said, like, you did a terrible job here, man. And he'll be like, there's too many deer. And he'd show me about like looking at a tree that's, 3 foot tall and be like, how old do you think this tree is? I was like, I don't know, a sapling. He's like, no, that's a 7-year-old tree. And I was like, what? And he showed me how you can see where it was nipped off and it would start to grow again, and it'd be nipped off again. And it's trying to grow, but not totally able to.
Yeah, it sounds like I almost feel like you've been right there with me going through, because that's exactly what my forester has been showing me in that area where you're looking at something, you're like, oh, I don't know, it was a year or two old. And it's like, no, you can see all those damage points where it got browsed year after year.
Yep.
And then at some point, they're just not going to grow. Like they've been browsed to the point where, it's wasted, all of that effort. So, but then when you see the inside of a fence and it's this lush vegetation, you wouldn't think that there's any way you're looking at the same area. And you see firsthand that deer, they have an impact on the landscape. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah. And while we're on that topic, that's one of the changes for 2025 was if you want to explain the DMAP, the extended season, explain a little bit what that is and why that came about.
Right. So that was a proposal that our board put on moved through the meeting in April. And I talked about how there's the two meetings. The April meeting finalizes everything. So as they were going through the seasons and bag limits at the April meeting, the motion was made to expand the DMAP season into the late season. And we've had this late season. It's kind of new, but we've had it in DMAP, in CWD areas, kind of in the central part of the state. And we had it in the southeast. There was a DMAP area there where we found CWD, so we did a late season. And the board made the decision to move and create a late season. So it's after Christmas, right away after Christmas, for about a month time frame, a late season firearms season on DMAP properties. So it's not statewide, it's not everywhere, it's only on DMAP properties. So for those who get that DMAP tag or able to redeem that coupon, they're going to have the ability to hunt with a firearm after Christmas again in through January.
Yeah, I'm surprised to see that people would have voted for that time with the weather and everything else that it comes with it. Personally, like if it were up to me and this is Beau's world that he was living in, seeing like a September archery season of say 7 days, it seems like archery participation is up higher from a doe. For me to shoot more does, because I'm one of those people that I have a goal of shooting a doe early in the bow season every year, and I can't get myself to do it because I'm chasing bucks, and I always think that I might screw it up and there might be a buck coming through, and I do think a lot of hunters think that way, and it's like having a doe only. It's like, okay, I know I could get get something in the freezer there in September earlier. Seems like those deer aren't pressured at all yet. Would be an opportunity, and then basically kind of right after our normal gun season of like 3 days or something, like how it used to be on the end of it. And I'm not saying that of like, oh, one of those guys of this is how it used to be. It was great. But, looking at it from that perspective, my biggest fear with the one after Christmas is, well, there's two things. One is the tradition of flintlock. And I do understand, again, this is only DMAP areas. Right. But the tradition of flintlock, if that'll change where, are you going to have to wear orange now if you're hunting in a DMAP area with flintlock, and that tradition of just, old style as far as either bow hunting or with a flintlock muzzleloader, and then also bucks that have shed their antlers already being shot for does. Right. It seems like in the areas that I spend a lot of time in, a lot of those older age class deer are losing their antlers in December and January now. And maybe it's always been that way, and that's just what I'm seeing more of, but of that being impacted as well. Yeah, those are two things that we're, like I said, going to be monitoring closely as well to see what the data shows. Do hunters participate like we thought they would, and then what, in fact, are they harvesting? And that's questions that I think everybody has at this time. From the board's perspective, they were willing to take the step and make this change now and accept that unknown because of what they've been hearing about the deer impacts on the forest regeneration. They thought we're in a point where it's time to make a change, see how it works.
analyze that data. And it might be, when it's all said and done, maybe that early September timeframe, because that's something that's been talked about as well. Maybe that is going to be the preferred route, because maybe hunters just aren't participating after Christmas. We'll see. I think there's a lot of potential options that are going to be considered over the next couple of years as we have a growing deer population in some areas, as CWD continues to spread, as we see impact to forest regeneration. Those are all things that are going to be talked about. For this year, this is with the direction that the board wanted to go. So we'll analyze the data, provide them with the results, and see how it worked.
And is that something? So it sounds like, based on what you're saying, this is kind of a trial thing and something that's not a set in stone from here on forward sort of deal.
I think that's absolutely the point. And in some of those areas that have been DMAP'd, I know one in particular, it's been DMAP'd for, I want to say 15 years. And it's a public land DMAP. And yet, if they still can't get the regeneration that they want after 15 years, it's like something needs to change.
Yeah.
What's that definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over again and thinking something's going to change?
Yep.
You have to try something different. If they're not getting the regeneration to the point that they need to stay in DMAP for year after year after year, there's a problem, because DMAP was never designed to be permanent. DMAP was always designed to address those hotspots, reduce the deer populations in those areas, and then come out of the program. And there have been some properties that were on private and public land where they've been able to take them out of the program. That's the goal of DMAP. Nobody from a landowner wants to be in DMAP long term. But almost by definition, that means you got a deer population problem. So if this extended season has the intended effect of removing those deer out of those hot spots, and that landowner comes back on and says, actually, we're good now, I'm not going to be enrolled in the program anymore, then it was a success.
Yep.
So that's the direction that we're going to go for this year.
Okay. Yeah. No, that makes sense. I appreciate you explaining that and going through it. I had heard, I don't remember where I heard it, but it was someone within the Game Commission had spoke one time saying it's more difficult to remove seasons versus adding to it, just because of the from the public. It's just harder to pull that stuff away. Hey guys, thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed this conversation, share it with your buddies. Leave us a rating, a review, and subscribe. If you want to check out more content like this, there's plenty in the links below. We truly appreciate having you guys along with us.